Hello my good pals, and welcome once again to the Onion Creature Book Club, where we discuss video game related literature from time to time. Today's topic of discussion is the fourth volume of Kirby Manga Mania. I covered the first 3 volumes in previous videos and found it quite entertaining, and since they are continuing to release these volumes, I decided to continue. This is all content which is never officially before released in English, so it's great to see it, and they're all in this nice form factor. I really like the cover design they are continuing to use. It's quite nice. So let's see what Kirby and his pals have been up to in this installment of Kirby Manga Mania. Chapter 1 is titled Adeline in Love with Love. This chapter heavily features the character Adeline, which is cool. She hasn't been that heavily featured in other chapters, so good to see such a major character be represented in manga form. In this chapter, Adeline is in search of a boyfriend, and none of these various critters will fit the bill. And so she paints a human body, and then Kirby lives on the head, because I guess according to Adeline, that is the ideal male form, is this thing. You can't compete with it. That's all there is to it, I guess. As is usually the case, the status quo is restored at the end of the chapter, and Kirby returns to his normal form. As tends to be the case, the first chapter is pretty memorable. That would be one word for it. At the end of this chapter, we do get a behind-the-scenes image, which is pretty cool to see. You get an insight into the process of the manga creation and some rough sketches, which it's a fun inclusion. I like these extra details that they put into this series. Chapter 2, the biggest cat craze of all time. As expected, this chapter is about cats and how they're all the craze these days. So they figure out, hey, Nago, that guy, he's a cat, so they're gonna use him to increase the popularity of the manga, I suppose, would be the concept. Nago does not seem to be up to the task, and so Kirby assumes the form of a cat to harness the online popularity of cats. The hit film starring James Corden. And there's this part where Kirby manipulates DDD into being his, servant. I don't really know how that happened, it just did. Finally, Kirby decides he doesn't want to be a cat no more, so then Nago decides to act as a cat, and between chapter 2 and chapter 3 we have another behind the scenes section in which we see a further developed version of the previous sketch. Chapter 3, Meta Knight's big face reveal. This is one in which Meta Knight is featured, and the subject is trying to discover what Meta Knight might look like underneath that darn mask that he tends to wear. As it turns out, Meta Knight manages to lose his mask, and he must find a new one, which he does, and he has a spare one, which is a no mask. I think that's a thing in Japan, I would assume. And then Kirby ends up with Meta Knight's mask, and so he impersonates Meta Knight. It's the classic case of stolen identity. So Kirby and Meta Knight end up having a duel. Meta Knight's spare mask is cut in half, revealing a hydrating face mask. And I guess he just has a lot of spares, is the idea. He has many spare masks. Then the chapter ends with Meta Knight flying off, but oh no, he forgot his mask again. Wow, who could have thought that would happen? We then get another behind the scenes page. Chapter 4, Invincible Gordo's Weakness. Chapter, of course, features Gordo, the iconic Kirby enemy. He has a mouth in this, which is not usual. Gordo, I guess, is lonely because he's invincible, but he can take emotional damage like the rest of us. So that is his vulnerability, is being emotionally abused. Kirby tries to befriend Gordo, but there's, issues because Gordo is very spiky and he hurts anyone he comes into contact with. That's the point of Gordo. The final section of this chapter features Gordo removing his spikes, which is the thing he can do, and then he's not recognized because he does not look like the traditional Gordo, and that's the finale there. Chapter 5, Ribbon, the grown-up lady. Here we have Ribbon being featured. In this chapter, Ribbon feels as though she is not being treated as an adult and wishes for that to be the case. After a tumultuous time, Ribbon and Kirby decide to have fun in a beach. So that's how that one went. Chapter 6, Forward DDD Expedition Team. This chapter, DDD leads a team of intrepid explorers on a dangerous quest. The chapter is narrated by Waki, who's a good character. We like to see Waki around. The team makes it to an abandoned temple, and there's various traps and horrible things which happen to King DDD. He's just the punching bag. That's his role in most chapters. At the end, he is so horribly mutilated that they use his disfigured body as a stand-in for an alien, which is fairly morbid, I guess. Jesus, man. Christ almighty. Chapter 7, Super Power-Up, Old Kirby. He's just too energetic, and so King DDD and his gang decide, hey, why not make Kirby old so he's less goddamn obnoxious? But as it turns out, being old people can still be annoying, I guess. Here's one panel that I found really horrifying. It's Kirby's skin sagging because he's old, and it's like, no, don't. Why would you draw that? Good God. But yeah, Kirby, he's still got his appetite. He's still got, his mannerisms, but they're tweaked because he's old. So King DDD decides, hey, you know what? Regular Kirby was actually better than this. I was wrong. I made a horrible mistake. So he gets Mr. TikTok's brother, which is the thing in this chapter, and he gets him to turn Kirby young again. But he made him too young, and now he is but an infant, which is also not what was wanted. Chapter 8, Goodbye King DDD. In this chapter, King DDD gets cancer. Or so he thinks, because it's actually Gooey, who he accidentally ate earlier. He left before the doctor could say that it wasn't life-threatening. And so King DDD, he decides to live his best life for that day, be the king that he always wished he could have been, and so he's nice to all his buddies, including Kirby, more so than he would normally be, that's the point, because he thinks he's gonna die a horrible death. King DDD realizes that he wants to be remembered as a hero, and he seizes an opportunity when a nearby child is caught in the stream of a river. So DDD jumps in and sacrifices himself. Then Gooey gets spit out, and he realizes that actually that was gooey in his stomach, and he's actually not going to die of stomach cancer, which is a real serious thing and should not be joked about. Chapter 9, The Haunting at Chilly Shrine. It's a hot summer day, and the gang is feeling overheated, so they go to this mystical spot called the Chilly Shrine, where there is a haunted ice sphere that Kirby decides to make some shaved ice from, but it turns out that was a bad idea because it was a sacred ice sphere, which is also sentient. And the other characters are cursed, and they become disfigured in unfortunate ways. And then King DDD is encased in the ice, and so he's just stuck there forever. Wow, cool. Chapter 10, The Cursed Kirby Doll. In this, King DDD gets a Kirby voodoo doll, but he also wants to make sure the stuff works, so he gets a King DDD doll. King DDD goes to the festival with Poppy Brothers Jr., and they try and get Kirby's tear for the doll, but what turns out happening is that King DDD's doll is just mutilated in horrible ways, which causes the king immense pain. Chapter 11, Training in Secret Sweepstakes Techniques. Paint Roller has come up with some foolproof methods for winning a sweepstakes. He just gets a lot of stuff, and King DDD and Kirby, of course, are jealous of him, and so they want to learn his techniques, which are all an elaborate and convoluted scheme of nonsense, and they end up putting in their letters to get the sweepstakes, and Kirby gets something. He gets a meal set. Wow. But King DDD, he don't get nothing because he forgot to put his name on it. Gotta remember that. Chapter 12, Legendary Teacher Kirby. This is an alternate universe in which King DDD is the principal of a school, and his vice principal is Poppy Brothers Jr., and they have an unruly class comprised of the animal friends and some other enemies, and they bring in Kirby, Mr. Kirby that is, to be the new teacher to whip them into shape and get some learning done in that classroom. The new teacher uses a variety of unorthodox techniques in order to facilitate learning, and I guess how he finally wins over the students is by subjecting them to his singing, which I guess is really horrible. That's the end. Chapter 13, Kirby's Past and Future. This is a chapter in which Kirby describes the wonders of reading manga online, which is a thing you can do, I guess, in Japan because it's not in English. So this chapter chapter informs you on how you can read manga on a computer screen, or perhaps a tablet screen, or even a smartphone. Wow, who would have thought? The characters reminisce on the different eras of the manga, and they show how the character design has changed over time, and they go over different visual styles. At the end of the chapter, Kirby and pals tell you that you should read Kirby Manga Mania, and that is the end of the chapter, and also the end of the volume. Well, that was Manga Mania Volume 4. Lots of strange and wacky things happened therein, and I'm pleased to have shared them with you. These are a good historical object just to have. I like collecting them. It's nice to see them all in a row on my bookshelf. They look nice together. Well, that was a blast, so thank you for joining me for this edition of the Onion Creature Book Club. I will see you in the future, my friends. Adieu.